Hey guys, Matthew. It's been about a week since the last update of the project predicting profitability. A lot has changed, a lot has been farmed, and a lot of data has been collected since then. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at that. There's still a lot that is being farmed. We're still nowhere near done, but I will say that the project has been advancing at a faster pace than I initially expected, and that's because a lot of people have been asking me to take part in it, and I've basically given some roles out to some people who I trust to gather some data. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at what's new, basically what's been discovered, and there's quite a bit to go over, so let's get right into it. Now, again, not going to have a webcam because a lot of the information is where my webcam usually is, so there's that. Okay, so first off, we started doing Deli Orbs. Now, Deli Orb testing is actually really easy because the loot tables from Deli Orbs are very small, which helps a lot, and another reason why it's really easy to test Deli Orbs is because Deli Orbs are not affected by any sort of scaling or any sort of quantity or rarity or anything like that. They're just a basic loot table, which is going to throw loot at you every single time that you get a tile of rewards. So because it's not affected by anything else, it makes it very, very easy to actually do the math on the value of them. So we're doing basically 50 Deli Orbs per, in some cases 100. So for example, for the cartography Deli Orb, we did 100 maps, which has not yet been 100 orbs instead of 50, because the loot table is a little bit larger. Therefore, we need to do a little bit more testing, but it's not been implemented yet. But looking at, for example, Metamorph, over the course of 50 orbs, or 527 layers, we dropped 1,073 catalysts. So every time, essentially, that your actual orb, or your Deli reward, dings or, reaches the maximum and explodes and gives you rewards, every orb is worth 1.9 or 1.19 chaos per explosion, right? So in most maps, you're going to get about 12 bars of loot or 12 bars of rewards. So you'd multiply that by 12 to know the value of, a Metamorph Deli Orb from just the actual catalysts themselves, right? We're not looking at anything else. Now, this number is going to be subject to change, but as always, everything is going to be automatically updated, so you don't have to worry about that. Blight Deli Orb, honestly, one of the worst orbs in the game, and the main reason for that is because they removed the ability to drop Blight in maps, so the only thing they drop are either bad oils, because I don't think it can drop silver or golden oils. If it does, it's just extremely rare, so it doesn't even matter much. And it doesn't also drop Blighted maps anymore, so it's only dropping like maps with the Blight Anoint, which is the equivalent of a rusted Blight Scarab, which is just horrible, especially because it doesn't respect your Atlas. It can drop you white maps, yellow maps. It's just bad. As you can see, 0.26 chaos value over the course of 529 layers of rewards, which is absolutely horrible, and that's accounting for violets being sellable, which they probably aren't even sellable. Next, we have Imperial. Now, this is the one for offerings of the goddess, things that are enchanted. Now, we're only looking at offerings because the enchanted items are far too many variables there. It's impossible to account for. The bases matter, the item levels matter, etc. So we're just looking at the actual offerings. So over the course of 598 layers of rewards, he got 147 offerings for a total of 0.05 chaos per layer of reward. Now, this is horrible, again, but you have to realize that this is an orb which is extremely powerful in a league start scenario for the first couple days, because the offerings are about 5 chaos each, 4 to 5 chaos, and the actual Imperial Deli Orb is only 5 chaos as well. And doing the math on this, we can realize that every 4 bars of loot, you'll basically be rewarded with an offering per orb, which means that if your maps are the most minimum juice possible with the current Atlas is about 8 tiles of rewards. So we're looking at 2 offerings per orb per map, and the actual orb is only costing you 5C. So you're doubling your money with just the actual offerings themselves, not accounting for the splinters, the simulacrum stuff, not accounting for anything else. So they're very, very strong, but they just have a very short shelf life. You give them a couple days and they're no longer worth anything. Okay, moving on with Blight. Now, this is one that I covered in the previous video with the Rusted, but this time around we did Gilded, and I was surprised just how good this one is. So over the course of 238 Blights with Rusted, we got an average of 19.4 chaos per map, which is not bad. A lot of that is from the 217 Blighted maps, and some of that is also from oils and oil extractors. Now, looking at Gilded over the course of the roughly the same amount of maps, 211 Blights total in 200 maps. Now, if you're wondering why there's more Blights than maps, it's because this node over here gives you a 20% chance to get an additional Blight encounter. Now, looking at 200 maps, that should mean about 240 Blights total. But the reason why it's only 211 is because there is a hard cap on number of mechanics that you can get in a given map. And if you reach that cap in a small map, such as Toxic Sewer, which is what I was farming, it's really rare that you'll actually get the second Blight. And because there's no way to force it, the only way is to naturally get it via the 20% chance. I only got it 11 times in 200 maps, which is not great value, but still, technically it's free. Anyways, over the course of 211 Blights, I got 408 Blighted maps. This is pretty crazy. It basically means that we're getting roughly double than what we were getting on Rusted with Gilded. Not to mention that all the good oils are also just about doubled. You can see 8 golden versus 15, 12 silvers versus 20. Maybe we got a little bit unlucky there. 22 opalescent versus 49. So essentially all the good oils are also just about doubled. So Gilded is really strong, especially with current Gilded prices, which are just like super cheap. Now, the downside of Blight is that they take a pretty strong character, and also they take quite a bit of time to actually complete. But looking at the average value of one Blight with Rusted, it's 19 chaos. Now, this doesn't include the cost of the scarab, but this is, whatever. And this also doesn't cost include the cost of the Gilded scarab, but it's also really cheap, just a few chaos and 39 chaos value per map. Which is just absolutely nuts, given the actual investment. And this also doesn't even include the actual extractors. So looking at the Rusted versus Gilded, we dropped about twice the amount of extractors, or just about. And the thing about 111 oil extractors is, yes, you could sell the oil extractors for whatever their going rate is, but the reality is that how you actually want to use the oil extractors is on jewelry pieces which are anointed with golden oil anoints. And especially rings, because there's only 2 oils required to anoint a ring, which means if one of them is a golden oil, you have a 50% chance of turning your oil extractor into the value of a golden oil instead. So, for example, we can look at here and see that this is 39 chaos value per map, but in reality, these 111 oil extractors are essentially worth roughly 55 golden oils instead if you were to anoint jewelry. So if I was to do that and add, say I do 0 here, but then I do 70 here, you'll see that this is going to increase yet another 10 chaos profit per map, or almost 10 chaos profit per map anyways. So there is some pretty massive value from actually turning your oil extractors into golden oils, which is very easy to do using regex. So if you look at the tree here at the bottom, there's going to be a node which is called Distilled Fungus, which gives you Blight bosses and errors, drop an additional anointed jewelry item, and the Gilded Fossil is going to give you a lot more Blighted bosses. I think it's like 1 more Blight boss per lane, minimum. And then I think there's this one here, Blight encounters contain up to 1 additional Blight boss as well. So you are going to get quite a few of these Blight bosses, and therefore quite a few jewelry pieces which are going to be anointed. Now, you'll have to make sure that you see them on your filter, because most filters are going to hide those. So make sure to add that back into your filter. But the thing is, you're not actually going to have to learn all these anoint by heart or anything else, because if you look in the Casual Exile document, there's going to be a string of regex, which you can simply copy paste in the game over here down in the highlight section, and it's going to show the jewelry pieces which have the right anoints which can be used to try to extract golden oils. Now, the ones that are going to be included are rings, which have 1 golden oil, or amulets, which have 2 golden oils as part of their actual anoint. So you'll see a bunch of strings for regex, and essentially that's going to become your best friend in terms of knowing when to use your oil extractors to get the maximum amount of value compared to just selling them outright. Okay, moving on. Harbinger. Now, in the previous video, previous update, we looked at Harbinger with Sextant, and it was not horrible. Like, it was kind of okay. Most Harbingers were worth about 5 chaos each, and it seems like this hasn't changed much. Now, I think that the reason why this says 3.5C is current manipulation on the Ancient Orbs, but it's actually about 5C per map. Or 5C per Harbinger, I should say, which is not horrible. However, this is utilizing the Sextant. Without the Sextant, we're actually cutting that value by more than half, and that is just bad. Like, matter of fact, when I was doing this testing of Harbingers without the Sextant, if I was using any more than a Rusted Harbinger, Scarab, I was actually losing money. Because every Harbinger is only worth about 2 chaos in the current state of the game. Yeah, you can get the map mod for, 2 Harbingers for 4 chaos, which is 2 chaos each. You can get a free one on the tree. So you're getting, basically 2 chaos profit per map if you're using a Rusted Scarab. And if you're using a Polish, you're losing money. So it's really, really bad. You basically need the Sextant in order to turn a profit with Harbingers right now. Unless, of course, you're just lucky and you drop a Mirror Shard or something like that. But from one map to the next, it's really, really bad. Okay, something that we hadn't looked at yet is Legion. Now, Legion is actually really, really good. We're going to look at Rusted and Gilded both, and I'll explain some of the numbers that you see here. Now, note that the best way to make currency right now with Legion is using only the 40% Maraketh node on the tree. So look at I'm talking about this node right here, which gives you Legion encounters in the areas have a 40% chance to include a Maraketh army leading up to Emblematic. We're not going to want to use any of the other ones. And the reason for that is because to get the maximum amount of value from your actual emblems, you're going to want to sell them as sets on TFT for 5-way sets, right? You're not going to want to individually sell the actual emblems because you're going to lose a lot of currency if you were to do that. So because we sell them as sets, the rarest emblem is basically the bottleneck to the amount of sets that we get. And the rarest emblem is by far actually Maraketh, by quite a few percent. So because of that, we want to use only the 40% chance to get Maraketh on the tree. Now looking at the breakdown, you'll see that we have emblems from trash, from boxes, and some generals. And now the reason why we have a breakdown of trash, boxes, and generals is because the actual Sextant, which is not including in any of these calculations, does not apply to boxes. Right, it only applies to the trash mobs and the generals, so we had to break them down to where these actual emblems were coming from, so that when we do account for the Sextant in our profitability and try to find out whether we should use it or not, we can easily know where the actual emblems are coming from. But looking at the biggest difference from Rusted to actual Gilded is going to be emblems from general. Over the course of 200 maps or 447 legions, there's only 33 of them came from generals. Meanwhile, on Gilded, over the course of roughly the same amount of legions, 130 came from generals, which is a multiplicative of basically 4 times, or even more than 4 times the amount that you're getting from generals, because the generals drop a lot of splinters. And of course, a lot of splinters with 1% chance to become an emblem is like saying, 50%, or essentially twice as many, right? If you have a 1% chance to drop as an emblem, or 100% more splinters, and a 90% chance to drop as 1 splinter, on average, every splinter that drops is essentially doubled. That's the math on it, times 1.99. So that's what we're looking at. Now, emblems from trash is also a little bit higher from Gilded to Rusted, and the reason for that is the additional sergeants that are added by the Gilded Scarab. And then emblems from boxes is also a little bit higher, and that's from the additional Warhorde that you're going to get every single map. So over the course of 462 maps, you should get somewhere around 330 emblems. Roughly 40 of them should be Maraketh, so 40 sets essentially at 117C each, or if you're doing Rusted, only 26 sets. So there's a pretty big difference there. But the actual breakdown is actually not that big of Rusted versus Gilded. And the main reason for that is that bottleneck that I mentioned about Maraketh, because we don't care about all the other emblems that are dropping, right? We're basically counting them as like worth nothing. So in reality, this is even better because these Templar emblems individually that are dropping, you can sell them, and so can you sell the other ones. They're not really worth anything, but the Templar emblems are worth, I think 15 to 20C or something like that. So they do have value, which is not accounted for because we're only looking at sets. So that's a little bit of extra value that you're going to get, out of your maps. But looking at the breakdown, every legion that you kill with a Rusted Scarab is going to be worth roughly 15C versus 18C with Gilded. So there's not that big of a difference at all, right? Because of that bottleneck of Maraketh, and of course, because the actual emblems that are coming from trash and from boxes is pretty similar. It's really just the generals. But yeah, so 18 chaos or so per map. This is the value, not the profit. But if you were to use the Sextant, which gives you an additional legion, you'd see that it's about 33 chaos income per map versus 42 with Gilded. In my opinion, even despite the price, I would always go with Gilded because they're cheap. Now, if Gilded Scarabs were very expensive, I would say Rusted is actually more efficient because if you look at the investment, Rusted Scarabs are extremely cheap, less than a chaos per map. And the Sextant for +1 Legion is also really, really cheap. Meanwhile, Gilded is something like 6, 7, 8 chaos per map. So it's a lot more expensive. So efficiently speaking, you would be better off going with Rusted. However, you want to try to maximize profit per map, and Gilded is still going to be better profit per map. And also, because it has so much additional just basic currencies from the Sergeants, from the War Hordes and all that good stuff, it's actually going to amount to quite a bit of extra currency over time. And of course, you're also going to be rolling the dice at something really, really good more often. So you're going to have more chance at getting, you know, an Exalt drop, more chance at getting potentially a Mirror drop, more chance at getting, you know, you're going to have better sustain on your T16 maps. It's just overall going to be better. However, if the Gildeds were significantly more expensive, then I would actually stick with Rusted, just because the Bottleneck from Maraketh is such a big deal. But again, I would definitely, in the current state of the game, go for Gilded, and you'll see the breakdown in the Casual Exile document once it's implemented of Rusted versus Gilded, and of course the Sextant as well. So you'll be able to tell very easily at a glance which one you should run, and which one is most efficient on a profit per league mechanic basis. But that's pretty much it for my third update of Project Predicting Profitability. In the next update, we should be done with what I'm currently testing, which is the Breach Sextant for Chayula. Now, it's going to be very easy because it's going to be a one-to-one with Olnathal, so we'll be able to basically know the value of Olnathal Sextant without actually testing it. We are going to be looking at Metamorph with Gilded Scarabs instead of the Rusted information which we currently have, and we're also going to be looking at Expedition, which I think is quite strong, especially if you don't try to min-max it, if you try to just kind of run it very quickly, because it is a very time-consuming mechanic. So that's what's going to be in the next update, as well as, of course, a lot more Deli Orb testing, which we are currently doing. So I do expect this project to be done within probably the next week or two. Everything should be tested that we need to test. We also have a very valiant and brave person which volunteered to actually run contracts to figure out the value of contracts. He's running 200 contracts, item level 83 of each type. So that's also going to give us a lot of information for people who like to run contracts. So looking forward to getting the information back on the value of those. But anyways, before I go, as always, I do want to say a huge thank you to my supporters. So Rescorl, Brandon, welcome back, Thomas, Nate, The Great Master, Alex, Tim, Mercury, Johnny, Nalfgar, Solomon, Exo, Jared Costa, and Bizen, as well as, of course, anyone else who has supported me in the past and anyone else who wishes to remain anonymous. Hopefully you guys are enjoying these little updates. I can't wait for this whole thing to be completely done, and hopefully you guys are as excited as I am still. That'll be Matthew signing out. Until the next one. Peace.